Well, good afternoon. It's really an honor to be here with all of you today, and I am especially honored to be here with President Bill Clinton. In spite of the fact that our distinguished speaker today has done such extraordinary things for the United States and for the world, I'm going to try my best to put it succinctly, but it won't be easy, to keep what could be a long introduction brief, because I really know that you're here to see President Clinton and not me. If you would allow me just a few minutes, I would like to recognize the truly outstanding and sustained leadership that President Bill Clinton has shown in our fight against AIDS and tuberculosis. I had the honor of working with President Clinton in 1987 at the Office of the National AIDS Policy Director during Sandy Thurman's period, an office that was founded by President Clinton in 1993. It was created to address the AIDS crisis. As president, he responded aggressively to this crisis, scaling up attention to research, prevention, and treatment. He convened the first ever White House conference on HIV and AIDS in December 1985, released the first national AIDS strategy in December 1986, and prepared the first federal biomedical research plan for HIV/AIDS in 1997. Overall funding for AIDS-related programs within Health and Human Services within the United States increased by 156% during his administration. And President Clinton directed the Department of Justice to vigorously prosecute any employers or healthcare facilities that discriminated against people with HIV/AIDS. President Clinton's leadership made significant strides to curb the epidemic with the aggressive implementation of the Ryan White Care Act in the United States. From 1995 to 1990-10, he then instructed me to add a supplement in the Minority AIDS Initiative that dropped more than 70% of the new infections in the country, and in 1995, the AIDS cases fell off the list of the top 15 causes of death in the United States. After leaving office, President Clinton did not stop. He continued his work to fight the epidemic, but on a global scale. At the International AIDS Conference in Barcelona in 2002, Nelson Mandela asked him to help millions of HIV-positive people in developing nations who were unable to afford life-saving medication. President Clinton garnered international support and agreements with his personal relationships, also engaged with pharmaceutical companies in a way that they had never before been, that led to a dramatic shift from only 50,000 individuals in sub-Saharan Africa on antiretroviral therapy and only 200,000 globally in the developing world on treatment in 2002, now approaching over 20 million people today. That cost of these HIV treatments has dropped dramatically because of these partnerships, and in most cases, more than 85 to 90%. Truly a remarkable achievement that keeps on giving. When you think of the lives touched and the lives saved because of that, the family stabilized, the community stabilized, and the country stabilized, it is truly humbling. These efforts, which continue today through the now independent Clinton Health Access Initiative, also known as CHI, have reached millions of people and saved lives. On the TB front, CHI has been a leader in working with countries to address pediatric tuberculosis along with HIV expansion, and is also working closely with the Ministries of Health in 7 focus countries to improve national responses addressing challenges with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And that really is just the tip of the iceberg. President Clinton is known for so many accomplishments that I almost feel his dedication to global health really got lost in his narrative. 8 years during his presidency, he had many specific attempts to supplement, augment, change, and intensify relationships that the United States government had that could better identify partnerships that brought more people into care and treatment. But for those of us who knew firsthand of his dedication and his passion to improve the health of all people around the world, his contribution to global health will not be lost. It is now my distinct honor to introduce you to President Bill Clinton, a friend and the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to Eric Gooseby for his long ago beginnings in the fight against HIV/AIDS as a clinician in San Francisco in the 1980s, to his work in our administration, to his service on the board of the Clinton Foundation. What is it?
We demand for decriminalization of sex work worldwide and in the United States. We demand a repeal of SESTA FOSTA, which is killing sex workers around the world. We know you have the power still to do this.
As a black trans woman doing this work, fighting for sex workers, we demand safe housing. We demand the repeal of SESTA and FOSTA. We demand respect. We demand to have 2020 not in San Francisco. We deserve to see our brothers and sisters from all over the world. I'd like you as the president, please do something
we know you support
for
sex
us.
workers. We know you support sex workers. Please help us. This law is killing us. SESTA FOSTA is killing us. 13 girls have gone missing in the United States already. 3 are dead, and we're being assaulted every day, and we're not included in the conversations.
The conference in 2020 should be moved out of the United States, and drug users from around the world join these with sex workers here with this demand.
Decriminalize sex work now. Every country that's here, we need decriminalization. When you decriminalize sex work, you decrease HIV by 50%! By 50%! If you want to decrease HIV, then decriminalize sex work. The Lancet shows that 50% of HIV prevalence goes down when you decriminalize sex work. Sex workers work. Give us our rights. Give us our labor rights. SESTA equals death. SESTA equals death. Sex workers work. Sex workers work. Sex workers work. Stop killing us. Stop killing us. Stop killing us.
And even in Europe, we all are influenced by this bad situation in America. Please protect us. Last time you were on the conference in Vienna, we made a handshake, you and me. You are coming to our stand of the NGOs. Please, we need our help. Please.
The USA, you should be ashamed. You're ashamed for the whole HIV movement globally. Your laws are killing us all over the world regarding drug laws, sex work laws, your anti-prostitution pledge. Your policies are horrible. You are killing us, including in the USA. You are treating us like cheats, like criminals. You should be ashamed, and you should have a conference in the USA. You have travel restriction.
Thank you for listening to us.
Please allow the presenter to continue.
Text we're supposed to say. We're supposed to tell them that they're free to protest and we start again. Which line?
Please allow the presenter to continue. Please allow the presenter to continue.
First of all, I'd like to commend the conference on allowing people who come here with a grievance, a concern, the right to be heard. Not everybody can be scheduled on a program. I think it's important. So, Dr. Becker, Dr. Rice, Owen, Ryan, thank you for doing that. I also would like to say just one more word about Eric Goolsbee. I first heard about him in the 1980s when he was running an AIDS clinic in San Francisco. I know San Francisco is in the United States, and I know that a lot of you disagree with our government on a thing or two. Put me down in that category. But you should also know that for those of us who care about this issue in the United States, it is a sacred place. Many people died, and all the first battles were fought, and they died some more, and I'll never forget in 1984 when a distinguished American diplomat sneeringly referred to my party as the San Francisco Democrats because we wanted to stop the death. So I think when you get there, you'll be glad they held a conference in San Francisco. I also want to thank the people who have worked with me these last now 17 years through CHI, beginning, as Eric said, with the idea being planted when Mandela and I closed the AIDS conference in Barcelona in 2002. We could not have done this work without the support of DFID, UNITAID, the governments of Sweden, Norway, Ireland, the Gates Foundation, ELMA, IKEA, Susan Buffett, Elton John, the Gavi Alliance, the Global Fund, the World Bank, and so many others. I say this to make a larger point. The whole fight against AIDS worldwide and against tuberculosis, the current effort to reconcile the need to deal with non-communicable diseases without abandoning our efforts. All of these things represent remarkable partnerships. There has been no Brexit in the war against HIV and AIDS. And I've got several things I want to say today, most of which will be painfully obvious and which are known to many of you better than to me. But there was an article written just a couple of days ago by Laurie Garrett, who generally always reminds us of the dark side of this struggle we're in. It made me want to just say this. The most important thing I have to say is, through a combination of complacency in some places and outright hostility to global multinational cooperative efforts in others, there is a serious risk that many people will say, let's quit doing this, or let's ease off, or let's go spend time on non-communicable diseases, or any other, I can think of 10 other reasons. There is always a reason to abandon or reduce your efforts in a cause in which you have been involved, in which total victory has not been achieved. That would be calamitous here. As all of you know, there's been a significant, statistically significant anyway, increase in the number of new infections which are resistant to dolutegravir and the lowest cost medicines. So what are we supposed to do? Well, the same principles which drove down the price of first-line AIDS drugs will drive down the next group if you get the volume up and you do all the work that has been done. So if you don't remember anything else I say, don't let anybody get complacent. Don't let anybody think that we don't have to continue to increase our efforts. Don't let anybody believe that the only way to deal with non-communicable diseases in difficult settings is to cut back on what we're doing with HIV/AIDS and with tuberculosis in particular. This is just something that we have to face. I realized I talked to two people on the plane coming here who were working on the plane. And they said, where are you going? Why are you going to Amsterdam? I said, I'm going to the AIDS conference. He said, thank God, all the people we live around have quit worrying about it, including people who are in at-risk populations. Try to think of something you can say. And so I'll start at the end and say that. The most important thing is there can be no Brexit in the fight against AIDS, and you don't want to forget it. I don't know what the question is. I know you. I don't know what the question is. I do know this. It was explained to me that under the rules of this meeting, you would be given a couple of minutes at the beginning to protest, and I would celebrate it, and I agree with that. And like often happens, you think we should follow the rules, but you shouldn't. So I don't know what the question is. I don't know what the question is. And I don't know, but all I can do is you've made an assertion here, which I have no reason to disbelieve, but I don't know.
Please allow the presenter to continue. Please allow the presenter to continue.
What do you say? We're going to try again? Here's what I think we should think about. And I'm going to try to give you all your time back, so I just cut off the first part of the speech. The number of people on treatment is higher than ever before. The number of people who have... Thank you. I think some attention should be given to the other victims of HIV and AIDS and the other victims of tuberculosis. And I've already explained I am not in a decision-making process here. I will, if you will send me a note, tell me what you want me to look into, I will. I don't know what you're saying, and I can't give this whole convention over to this. I'm sorry, I don't know. Believe me, I wish I knew everything. And the older I get, the more I wish it, and the more I realize it is not ever going to happen.
Please allow the presenter to continue.
Let's give him a hand. Thank him for giving the conference back to you. I think where we are today, with all of you know the positive numbers, and I think that we all know there are serious efforts being made to meet the UN AIDS targets, the 90-90-90 targets, the 2015 WHO recommendations. A majority of countries are going forward with test and treat policies. But the recently announced results in Eswatini, the country formerly known as Swaziland, basically give us a glimpse of why we should be optimistic and why we should be sober of what we're up against. It has the highest HIV burden in the world now at 26%. We started working there at CHIA several years ago, and in 2011, when we received funding from the Dutch Postcode Lottery's Dream Fund, we realized we had a long way to go. But the Minister of Health had set up an ambitious agenda, and we all got after it. Now, what do we know now? We know that there's still more we can do. Thanks to the partnership we had with AIDS Fund, the country committed to overcome the gaps in the system, to eliminate barriers to reaching everyone who needed treatment and testing. We put together a consortium called MaxArt, combining global and local networks of people living with HIV and research institutions and NGOs. In the first 3 years, more than double the number of people being tested, almost double the number of people on ARTs, and reduced the loss to follow-up ratio of clients by about a third. The government then, with the support of partners on the ground, in the next couple of years, had managed to reduce the rate of new infections by 44%. Now, when you get numbers like that, you think, well, we just need to do more of that. And there is some truth to that. But the level of optimism that I have seen in some places also overlooks some of the basic facts we face. For example, 1 in 3, someone becomes infected every 3 minutes. The number of people with new infections has been going down, but held steady in 2017. 1.8 million, that's a big number. And the growing demographics, more young people, especially in Africa, and the growing rate of infections in Eastern Europe and Central Asia mean that these numbers are going to get bigger. The gender inequalities are pretty breathtaking for new infections, and the burdens on women and girls are going to require special efforts to be addressed. 940,000 people died of age-related illnesses last year, and if that trend is continuing this year, that means approximately 35 people will die while I'm up here talking. Therefore, it's important not to let anybody suggest that we should basically engage in too much self-congratulations or relax. There are more than 15 million people still living with HIV not on treatment. 25% of those don't know their status. Even in high-income countries, we have problems. 15% of the 1.2 million Americans living with HIV don't know their status. And as I said earlier, there are new strands appearing all the time in this malicious, devilishly clever virus resistant to the remarkable progress that has been made in cutting the price and increasing the volume and availability of dolutegravir. So, what are we going to do? First, we need to test more, treat more, and deploy more prevention strategies, and scale up what we know is working. There are still too many young people, especially, not being reached. There's still too many people who aren't using the best data to target their efforts and to monitor results. We at CHI have done a lot of work trying to get the right technology out there, but a lot needs still to be done. Second, we have to continue our efforts to reduce the level of mortality, to increase viral suppression, to use better regimens for young children who still don't have access. I'm very grateful that the agreement was reached between CHI and dolutegravir to make this medicine available for $75 a year with fewer side effects. I'm very grateful that Unitaid helped us to do a partnership with ViiV Healthcare to speed the development of pediatric formulations. And I'm very grateful that, thanks to DFID, MedAccess, Unitaid, we made an agreement with Holgic to expand access to viral load price at lower cost, to expanding access to this critical test. We got to do all these things. But we also have to take the things that are working now and make them universal. You have made remarkable progress in reducing mother-to-child transmission, but we ought to be at 100%. And as the people who spoke here a few minutes ago remind us, there are still areas of this challenge that aren't really being addressed. We've got to do more to increase voluntary male circumcision. It makes a big difference in what happens. And I believe we have to fight for more oral PrEP and continued development of promising tools like long-acting injectable PrEP. I think it is important. I must say I've been somewhat perplexed at the opposition to this. And it's part of the swirling attempt to relitigate all these questions of sexual orientation and sexual identity in the context of the new politics of division that are sweeping the world. All I know is the only really pro-life answer is to save as many lives as possible by treating all these issues as public health issues. And so we have given a lot of thought to the importance of being steadfast, opposing discriminatory policies that will take us back, like those recently in East Africa that make it harder for the LGBTQ communities to access prevention, testing, and treatment. And we got to protect the activists who are out there putting their necks on the line to do this. It is, I will say again, if you believe in free speech, you believe in democratic government, you have to face the fact that there will be action and reaction and progress and retrogression. But you have to argue that when people tell you they sanctify life, the test is save as many lives as possible. This is always going to be a public health challenge. You can have your debates on the side about what the political policies ought to be, but save as many lives as possible. I also think this is important to, in this conference should remind people that TB is still the largest killer of people with HIV. For all the progress we've made, so everything that can be done to increase screening, treatment, and prevention, and deal with other advanced complications of HIV should be done, particularly with regard to children who are so very vulnerable to tuberculosis. We're going to have to keep working to get new TB drugs as well. So I'm very hopeful that in just a couple of months, at the first high-level meeting on TB at the UN, we'll be able to make progress, and for obvious reasons, I hope President Modi will go, or Prime Minister Modi will go, and I hope other leaders will go as well. I want to say one other thing about this. I'm glad that there are people who haven't lost their passion for dealing with these issues. But I think it's important to remember I'm in the Netherlands, so I have to say something about two issues. First, in all the years we've been working on AIDS, we have had two people lose their lives in service. Both were Dutch. Both were nurses. In 2006, in Lesotho, Samuela Verwey was shot and killed. We still believe it was a case of mistaken identity, but she lost her life just the same. In 2013, a young woman who had just gotten her doctorate in public health and was about to deliver her first child, Elifly Foods, was killed when her partner in the mall terror attack in Nairobi, Kenya. I think it's important, as we argue vociferously about what the way forward is to remember at the core, the people who do this work are motivated and often prepared to make extraordinary sacrifices by the desire to save lives. I was so glad on the way in that someone gave me a remembrance of the continued honoring of the memory of Yup Long, his partner, Jacqueline Van Tongeren, and the people who were killed on that flight 4 years ago on their way to Melbourne. I also want to say a final word of thanks to the Dutch Postcode Lottery. The Dutch can be very proud. It is now the third largest donor to non-governmental causes in the world. You know, I've kind of gotten used to the Dutch humiliating America in the ice skating races every 4 years at the Olympics. And I love having something to say that 100% of the world ought to be proud of. The Postcode Lottery invests all its own profits back into worthy causes in the Netherlands and then around the world.